Good morning. A warm welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley Sunday Forum to those joining us this morning. My name is Ray Sunby, President of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a secular and reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you have not yet done so. A special welcome to those who are with us for the first time. We invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist community. Membership forms, a list of upcoming events, information about donating, and other information can be found on our website, www.humanists.org.
Our speaker today, as I said, is Megan Rahm. Megan describes herself as the quintessential Midwest mom, but a very passionate atheist. From her childhood in rural Ohio to her present-day life in Toledo, she tells a story of struggles and triumphs through poetry. Megan is a poet, author, and blogger. She's written Free to Roam, poems from a Heathen mommy, and is now working on publishing her memoir about her mental health struggles and how becoming an atheist was an important part of her recovery. Her blog is from the Ashes of Faith and can be found at FreethoughtBlogs.com/ashes.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for having me today. So I'm Megan, my pronouns are she, her. My book, Free to Roam, Poems from a Heathen Mommy, was published by Freethought House and released back in February of 2021. And then I'm also the author of FreethoughtBlogs from the Ashes of Faith. So I live in Toledo, Ohio with my husband and my 5-year-old daughter. I spend a lot of time at home writing. I do have a part-time job in an arts program for a local nonprofit, but my job was really affected by the pandemic and hasn't quite returned yet. I grew up in rural Northwest Ohio, which is a pretty conservative area, and that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to read from my book. It's a poetry book about being an atheist mom in the Midwest. There's 4 sections, and the first section is called Curls and Cornfields. Yeah. So this first poem I'm going to read is called Beautiful Country. I missed the nights when lightning bugs speckled the endless horizon, and my eyes bathed in the indigo sky. My favorite color has always been newly sprouted winter wheat, an affirmation of new beginnings. I loved waking up after a snowstorm, blinding white and alone in the silence of the barren landscape. From the delicate irises of spring to the golden blazes of September, every bug in Henry County fluttered its way into our little house. Dark nights of thunder and wind made my heart pound to pieces and sparked a fascination with the dangers of the heartland. Growing up in the country was a crimson struggle of wits and tears, but I'll always cherish the beauty of my childhood home. This poem is important to me because I do complain about growing up in the country a lot because it was a pretty conservative area. But I want people to know that, living in the country wasn't all bad either. I have a lot of great memories of my family and friends there. I especially like the line, every bug in Henry County. So I can hear my dad saying that because he always said that every time we left the door open when I was growing up. So these poems, almost all of them were written during the Ohio stay-at-home order during the pandemic. And that was a time of growth for me as a writer and a mom because I had more time for both. This next poem is called Thrive, a message to my younger self. Thrive among the stairs, meant to strip your future naked. Thrive among the words, meant to leave your outlook tainted. Thrive outside the conformity of the minds no longer free. Thrive free of the book that binds their hands and knees. Thrive in your community on the outside, looking in. Thrive among your neighbors, ignoring their own sin. Thrive because you're strong and love will always win. These poems started out as a chapbook, and I was going to look for a poetry publisher. But then once I learned about Free Thought House and how they were publishing books for the secular community, I decided to change direction a little bit. So my publisher, their website is freethoughthouse.com. They have a lot of great books on there. I've bought a lot myself. This next one is called In the Back of a Pickup. Brittle bones chilled beneath frost moon eyes. She clings to the bed of a truck. Sticky pebbles clatter off the hungry tires. Pink sunset flickers through the singing leaves above. Rough road ahead. Alfalfa fields quickly pass by. Purple and green smear across the horizon. She tightens her grip as their insecurities whip in the wind. She's been imprisoned by a home with the biggest sky, but barely a pinprick on the map. One day, despair will grow wings, and a sheltered childhood will be fuel for her adventures. She shivers in the cold and never looks back. So when I was growing up, it was always a treat to ride in the back of a pickup, but I would never in a million years let my daughter do it now. This next poem is about when young boyfriends want to convert you. It's called Christian Admirer. Eyes of lust and honeydew don't mean I grant you permission to invade my liberated world. Drop the slate and let the luster fade. If you want in my life, I'm gonna need you raw. Be real. Give up because you'll never change me. Your envy shines like emeralds. I bet purity burns like hell. This first section is my favorite, so I'm going to do one more poem from it. This is called My Scars, My Story. My curls screamed as they were straightened. My songs were stripped from my lungs. Fresh freedom was depleted when I gasped. Shackles of indoctrination imprisoned my peers. I was alone. Time was never on my side in that small, tired town. Even when I left, cruel judgment branded a lasting impression. Scars that are just a part of my story that I'll finish in my own words. So now I'm moving on to the second section. The second section is called Why I Hate Sunday Morning, and it's all about my thoughts on Christianity. So this first poem is called How Do You Sleep? Indigo rain cleansing my brain after a restless night of soul searching. Relief comes when you realize God isn't real, and you're released from your rusty chains. An outlook of debilitating winter melts and sizzles into freedom. Like fresh linen under the morning sun, I put my heart out on the line and won. I'm the shy queen of my ruby paradise, which resides right here on earth. I no longer yearn for a flimsy mystery in the clouds. Breathe deep into the truth and sleep peacefully. So even though my family wasn't very religious, I was surrounded by Christianity growing up. This was especially visible in school and with my friends. I did go to public school, but there were prayers at almost every school function. Football games, basketball games, award ceremonies, banquets, everything. There was a prayer. I was in the marching band and our band had a chaplain. Like you really can tell it was a public school. It was really awful. This next poem is called Grounded. Ivory giggles and pink powder secrets, power an endless charade. Let it all hang out between the pews. Just once, let the cold stairs see your delicate pearl. Let lace and tumbleweed caress your bare skin. Let your fellow parishioners blush with envy. Let reality swallow you whole, and you'll realize you don't need to look to the skies. Satisfaction is found right here on the ground. So when I'm working, I don't really believe in writer's block or waiting for inspiration. For me, it's just like priming a well. I just have to sit down and get started. And for me, that oftentimes means journaling. I do a lot of journaling. This next poem is called Stuck in a Closet. There are crowds of atheists cloaked in the long shadows of steeples, even more than we know. They swallow the truth because they think they have to, because maybe they were raised that way. 1, 2, 10 years in a dark closet, their thoughts echo in the loneliness. They secretly question as a tortured mind now liberated, yet another voice suppressed. They're scared, but even more angry. I know that innermost turmoil. That anger will fuel progress, a passionate fire that lights the way. The most liberated life is an honest one. So another part of my creative process is meditation. I like to meditate with mala beads a lot. It really helps me focus. This next poem is actually a list, and I feel it's painfully honest. This is called 7 Reasons I Don't Speak Up. 1, to avoid confrontation. 2, so I don't have to explain myself. 3, because we still have to work together, and I don't want it to be awkward. 4, to avoid discrimination. 5, so I can survive Thanksgiving dinner. 6, because you won't take me seriously. 7, because I was told not to. So when this book came out, I obviously became a little more outspoken about being an atheist. And I did worry about my job, and I worried about finding future work. But so far it hasn't really come up. So that's good. I do still worry about it sometimes though. This next poem is about an old friend who went from skeptic to Christian. This was a friend of mine that I grew up with. I had lunch with her a few years ago, and I hadn't seen her for a while. And she had this job that she was just absolutely miserable at, just a horrible job. And then she found this new job, and she absolutely loves it, and it's amazing. And she told me she couldn't have done that alone. She couldn't have found that new job by herself, that God must have helped her. I was shocked. You know, she was never like that when we were younger. So this is called You Didn't Need God. You said you couldn't do it alone, but you did. We are all powerful in our own lives. Scale that jagged cliff, surf those tempest-swept waters. You are in charge. You are secretly sure-footed, resourceful, with undiscovered confidence. What you think is strength in God is really strength within yourself. You are more capable than you know. So now I'm moving on to the third section. The third section is called The Nice Heathen Family Next Door. And it's all about my life as a mom in Toledo. So this first poem is called Playdate. In a quiet neighborhood, tucked between accountability and appearances, I live among you, the outwardly faithful. With my soccer mom, SUV, weekly gymnastics classes, over-the-top birthday parties, picky eater battles, car seat wrestling, and inevitable grocery store meltdowns. My silent anger presses behind my warm, neighborly smile. Your small talk is carefree and careless. Would you let your bratty kid play with my bratty kid if you knew I was an atheist? So another thing about being an atheist in Toledo, I do worry about how it might affect my daughter. She started kindergarten in the fall. I just wonder if it's ever going to come up with her friends or when she meets other families. Nothing's happened yet, but I do worry about it. This next one's called Midwest Mom. There's definitely a stereotype for a Midwest mom, and I'm describing myself in this poem. I don't have the short haircut, and I don't like sports, but I'm definitely still a Midwest mom. Passive aggressive with a nervous giggle. I'm a casserole of sweet and salty. My soft meat and potatoes pudge keeps me warm in the snow. I'm a Midwest mom from a family caught between the farm and the city. My daughter's urban upbringing looks a lot different from my childhood in the country. Generations of strong women before me have given me a lot to live up to. We're steeped in tradition, but must keep moving forward. My little girl's smile lights the way, reaffirming growth in the blackest of swamps. Tomorrow looks bright if you squint a little. So that second to last line there, in the blackest of swamps, that's referring to the Great Black Swamp of Northwest Ohio, which is a very important part of our history. So this entire area was a big swamp, and it was drained for farmland in the mid-19th century. And my family was a part of that. My family's farm was established in 1852, so it's really important to my family's history as well. This next poem is called Am I Holding It Together? Am I holding it together just enough? My little girl, new to the world. Am I showing her what she needs to see? Does each fragile moment, every breakdown, every tear count? Or should I look at the bigger picture, her impending future? Is this struggle a drop in the bucket or the straw that breaks the camel's back? What matters is what she sees through her eyes, not mine. She paves her own way. I merely provide the asphalt. I'm moving on to the last section of this book now. This last section is called Midwest Mom, Meatloaf, and Revolution, and it is all about optimism. This first poem I'm going to read from this section is called We'll Keep You Well. We are all connected, one brain to another, and most of ours are broken. Our solutions are easy or complicated, but our wellness is a delicate state. Stability often comes from a pill bottle, and that's okay. Balance is the hard part. Be your own normal in an unforgiving world of rigid expectations. Come out of the dark and brush your tired smile. We're here to lift you up. Crawl if you can't walk, but keep moving forward. Your day in the sun is coming. So I write a lot about mental health. It's a huge part of my life. I used to write for healthyplace.com for about 2.5 years. I'm also a certified peer supporter in Ohio. This next poem is called Our Rope. Tired feet, a testament to our honest ambitions. We walk the same street, trying to live above water. Fingers clinging to the sky. Only bubbles acknowledge our fragile existence. Throw me a rope, and I'll throw you one too. Only rain trickles down from the top, but you and I, we can make the sun shine. This next poem is the one the book's named after, so this is Free to Roam. And this poem really sums up this entire project for me. So here's Free to Roam. Let questions swirl in my brain as my eyes strain at the glow of the screen. I'm a tired mom from the heartland with the world at my fingertips. Opportunities and choices are overwhelming and the world becoming so small. My corner of the planet is now yours as I peer into your faraway life. Once impossible connections are made as I share my story with the world, isolated but no longer alone. Okay, this is the last poem I'm going to read from this book. It is my husband's favorite poem from the book. You know, since I wrote this poem, during the stay-at-home order, there were no writers groups going on at the library. I really didn't have anywhere to share my work, so my husband was reading everything. He's not really a poetry person, and he would take it into work and show his coworkers, and so really, I was really grateful for that. So this last poem is called Girl Mom. How do I protect my daughter from having the stories all women have, from fearing the night and walking alone? How do I protect my daughter when rapists run for president, when boys will be boys, when accusation is too frequently overlooked? How do I protect my daughter when she doesn't have a say, when her body is property and legislation dictates her future? How do I protect my daughter from 78 cents to the dollar, from taxes that come in pink, from old and rotten expectations? How do I protect my daughter from the shards of glass when she destroys the glass ceiling and leads the way in a man's world? How do I support my daughter when she no longer needs my protection? So that is all I'm going to read from this book. So Free to Roam, Poems from a Heathen Mommy. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and freethoughthouse.com. I guess you guys could probably tell too, being a mom gives me a lot to write about. There's I do want to share a little bit from my memoir that I'm working on. This is also being done with Free Thought House. My memoir is about being an atheist with a mental illness. Becoming an atheist has been very crucial to my recovery. I have schizoaffective disorder, and that for me means mood symptoms like mania and depression, as well as psychosis. My psychotic symptoms are usually visual and auditory hallucinations. And prior to going to treatment, I called these hallucinations spirits and ghosts. I really had no other explanation for them, and that was my only connection to any kind of religion or spirituality. So when I did go to treatment when I was 21, I took antipsychotic medication and the hallucinations went away. And so then I knew the ghosts weren't real and neither was God. So also, like many people with a mental health diagnosis, I have more than one. I also struggle with an eating disorder. I recently spent 2 months at the Eating Recovery Center in downtown Chicago. I was discharged actually 6 weeks ago today. I was treated for symptoms of anorexia as well as avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, or ARFID, and rumination disorder. The treatment was absolutely brutal, but it was what I needed, and I'm doing much better now. That was actually my second time in treatment for my eating disorder. My first time was in my early 20s. So I talk about both schizoaffective disorder and my eating disorder in the memoir. And I do include poetry in the memoir as well. So I'm going to read some of the poetry from the memoir. So this first poem is about how eating disorders are often a lifelong battle, and it's okay to ask for help a second time. So this is called Fight. Falling down to the sickness, tiptoe around the shards. Rip your pretty dress on the thorns. You'll eat your feelings or starve. Waking up to the wreckage, the past still whispers in your ear. Sweep and mop the stage because today your number is up. Standing up to the darkness because your light is brighter than you think. Sing your beautiful song even when no one can hear you. Rising up for tomorrow, stomp out the nagging shivers. Fake it at your best because the best is yet to come. Giving the world a show because you can and you must. You're a star in your own right, and today you chose to fight. This next poem I'm going to read, also from the memoir, is about connections that you make in recovery. So this is called Together. There's a fire in my eyes. Smoke collects in my brain. My burning can be felt for miles, but I see your flame too. Talk me down from the very top. Catch me if I fall. Outstretched arms and stretched out smiles. Are you as tired as me? Dig deep because our ripple just became a wave. Our words are in harmony when we rise up together. Compassion is catching. You should take a bite. One out of love and one out of life. So I also want to tell you a little bit about my blog. My blog is called From the Ashes of Faith. It's at FreethoughtBlogs.com. And my username at FreethoughtBlogs is Ashes. I write about mental health, just life, family. I oftentimes write about questions about atheism. But I do have a series on there called A Secular Childhood, Letters to My Daughter, where I write letters about they're to my daughter to read in the future, just about things I want her to learn growing up with secular parents. So I'm going to read one of the letters to you. This is about death. So, dear daughter, I feel like death is a complicated subject when it shouldn't be. It's our feelings surrounding death that makes things complicated. I'm scared of death, which is natural, but I'm not worried about where I'm going in the afterlife. I'm scared because there's so much I want to do in life. Will I get to do all of those things? Will I have spent enough time with my loved ones? I recognize my worries are pretty pointless because when you're dead, you're not aware of your goals and wants anyway. Death is only sad to those still living. The belief in souls, heaven, and hell really makes the idea of death murky. I have a simpler explanation. Humans are a part of nature, another speck in the universe, and death is just a part of our life cycle. We return to the earth which we've always been a part of. Instead of worrying about death, it's better to concentrate on enjoying yourself now. Your time could be up at any time, so live your life to the fullest. My beautiful daughter, I'm really enjoying the time I'm spending with you right now, and that's all that really matters. Love, Mom. So my blog is often a platform for me to promote other work that I'm doing. I have other poetry books I'm working on. But yeah, the thing I'm working on most right now is the memoir. So, but also my book that I read from, Free to Roam, Poems from a Heathen Mommy. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and freethoughthouse.com. So that's all I have for you today. Do you guys have any questions?
I see a few hands. No, I don't. Okay, not yet anyway. Yeah, I was quite impressed with the poems. They're very good, and
Thank you.
when you were talking about the Midwest, I kind of remind me of my own childhood in fireflies. I sometimes miss fireflies, running out at night with your sisters in a jar to catch fireflies. And I was wondering, what do you see as a big difference between where you grew up and Toledo itself, which is,
Oh my gosh.
I say a city, is it with skyscrapers and all that, is it?
It's kind of funny because I love living in Toledo. I think it's just the perfect size city. I love it here, but it's only 40 minutes from where I grew up. So it's really close by, but it is like two different planets. It's so conservative where I grew up, and just, a lot of very religious people, you know. Ohio's definitely a red state, but Toledo's like this blue dot in this red state. And Toledo's very diverse. There's a lot of different people here, and I'm really happy that I'm raising my daughter here and she can be around everybody. I think that's really great. And just Toledo's a lot more liberal than where I grew up.
Did you feel the restrictions there? I mean, were you really afraid to have kids over, or were there parents who wouldn't want their kids to go over your house, or was it that bad?
You mean where I grew up?
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad because, I say my family wasn't very religious, but by that I mean we didn't go to church every Sunday like every other family. My dad still considered himself a Christian, and every once in a while we'd go to church on like Christmas or Easter, and we celebrated Christian holidays, but just, we didn't talk about the Bible. God didn't come up that much. It just wasn't as big of a deal to us, but my family still identified as Christian.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Okay. Also, you mentioned your work with therapy. What was the title you had?
I'm sorry?
You said you were certified something when you were working with
Oh.
mental health.
Yeah, I'm a certified peer supporter. That's someone who has lived experience with mental health issues, and you go through training to where you can support others who are going through difficulties with mental health.
Okay.
I've worked for a couple different mental health organizations with it.
What was the program you had, where you just talk? I'm trying to recall a term here.
I don't, I'm sorry, I can't think what the name of it was.
Yeah, there's a kind of a peer psychology group that meets where two individuals will get together, and the one will just talk, and the other one's job is to listen and not interrupt, or not to make suggestions. And I forget what that's called, but I was wondering if that's the sort of thing you do, or
There's definitely a lot of listening involved, but it is about sharing your own story a lot too.
uh-huh.
In this,
Definitely.
they changed, they trade places then. After one has a half an hour, then the other one gets a half hour.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So in this program where people who have experienced mental health issues attempt to give insight to those suffering and not in the light yet, that sounds like a wonderful process. And to combine the two, I haven't been through it, so you're going to have to tell us what it's like and what are the things you tell people that they did not realize. And the big question is, can you figure out a way to put that into your poetry?
That's a good point about putting it into poetry. I've definitely written more poetry about being an atheist than mental health. I've only written a few. Man, it's very empowering. Sharing your story and helping somebody else. And I think one of the main things you want to let people know is that they're not alone, that there's so many people that have gone through similar things, and we're just not alone. And there's so much help out there, you just have to know where to look.
That could be put in a poem.
Yeah.
I like the idea that you use atheism as a part of your recovery, and I think a lot of times that one of the advantages that people are concerned about a lot of things that when you sit down, they really don't make any sense at all. Why are bad things happening? Well, which specific bad thing and what's been wrong,
Well, another thing about atheism being important to my recovery is it helps me stick to my treatment because I know my medications work. I trust the science.
Uh-huh.
I know they work, and I'm going to keep taking them.
Yeah, good. Oh, the term we were looking for before was reevaluation counseling.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of that.
So been around a long time and hardly anybody's ever heard about it. When I was in Mendocino, I was part of it. And then when I came down here to the Bay Area, there was also a group here. And so it's got staying power.
That's cool. Nice.
And then there's a press called, oh heck, something for press, I forget now, sorry. And it's actually the person that's the head of it now is the son of the person who was the head of it when I used to take it in Mendocino.
Carl, I see you've got your hand up. And you're muted.
Yeah, I guess I beat Jerry or Dana by about a quarter of a second, but I was really surprised. I had an interesting question. You know, what I recall in my life is my conversion to atheism took a very long time, about 20 years. And so in the meantime, at the beginning, it was very discombobulated because I didn't know what I was looking for. And so I was in therapy and the therapist said, well, did you ever believe? I'll never forget that. I was like 50 years old. And he said, did you ever actually believe? And I remembered that I grew up in an Italian-American community. Everybody was Catholic. So in my mind, the whole world was Catholic when I was a child. In the meantime, there was quite a bit of turmoil in the process for me. So I went through many different religions, declaring them bullshit one after another, until I hit Unitarianism, where I met some people who at least were more open-minded. But still took me another 20 years or so to actually step up and say I'm an atheist. And I was identifying with some of your thoughts about, like, I rarely promote to myself, my clients, that I'm an atheist. I have no idea how that would be accepted, but I don't do it.
Right.
And I think that's part of, I think you call it some kind of a black box that you're sitting in or whatever it is. And I don't like it. And I had the same situation with my wife's family, especially not my own family anymore, but my wife's family. They're Catholics, and some of them are deep Catholics, and they are wounded. I actually came out to one of them about 2 years ago, and she was wounded, like I stabbed her.
Oh, wow.
You don't believe? So anyway, I just wanted to just hear a little bit more about your experience in the transition and how long did it take?
You know, I think that's interesting how you said, you know, it kind of took you a while and your therapist asking if you ever really did believe. And sometimes I kind of ask myself that, you know, did I ever really truly believe? I just remember growing up, I mean, yeah, we celebrated Christian holidays and, you know, and Christianity was all around me, but I still, even as a child, I was questioning it. I remember when I was a teenager, I kind of dabbled in paganism for a while. I was just searching for anything that made sense. And to me, paganism made more sense than Christianity, but it still was, I don't know, it still wasn't right to me, you know? And I feel like when I did become an atheist, when I took that antipsychotic medication, I was already like almost there anyway. You know, I was just dangling by a thread, just saying, okay, the only thing that I have with spirituality is these hallucinations, these spirits that are following me around. You know, so when they went away, I was like, okay, they're not real. God's not real. But I feel like I was almost there anyway. And the medication just kind of pushed me over the edge.
What medication do you find useful?
I take a lot of different things. For my mood symptoms, the most helpful has been lithium. I've tried a lot of different medication over the years, but I've been on lithium for quite a while now. And with the psychosis, I take Geodon. I take a pretty large dose of it, but it seems to help too. The only problem with some of those medications is it cause weight gain, which is, you know, hard to deal with.
Okay, Jerry or Dana?
Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I grew up in a Midwestern town in Minnesota where Lutheranism was the religion of choice, and practically everyone, except for our family and maybe one or two others, were very, very involved in the only social activities that existed in our town, the school and the church. And so my family wasn't religious, but we had to kind of pass, you know. But I wanted to ask you about what you found most helpful about therapy. And I wondered, because one of the problems I think people have in therapy is dealing with letting go of the expectations of other people. And that is so strong that, you know, even if you say, oh, I'm never getting married, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that, and I'm not going to, you know, be a traditional woman. And then but buried within you are all these expectations of your family about what you should do. And that was one of the things I found hardest to let go of. And I also found most helpful hearing that if you let go of these expectations, you are not a bad person. And that was a big surprise to me. I thought, oh my God, can that happen? Can I let go of these expectations and be an okay person? And I wondered what you found about therapy to be helpful.
Well, as far as it goes with having schizoaffective disorder, I've always believed like medication is number one. However, I've had to do a lot of therapy with, struggling with my eating disorder. And I think it's kind of interesting that you're talking about expectations, because something that's come up with me recently is, like holding yourself to high expectations when you don't do that as much with other people. You know, why don't you hold yourself to the same expectations that you hold for other people? I don't know. That's just, that was something interesting that just came up recently. But I don't know. I don't feel like I deal with the expectations of others as much. And that hasn't come up in therapy as much for me.
Well, the ones that you have of yourself are kind of the internalized expectations of others. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely.
You've mentioned that you celebrate these Christian holidays, namely Christmas and Easter. I grew up in a non-religious family. Now, we did celebrate Christmas and Easter, but it was a non-religious celebration. I mean, what we did for Christmas was we had a tree and we exchanged presents, and that was it. And for Easter, it was just a matter of Easter eggs, eat the Easter egg hunt. So, so we still did the thing, but we weren't religious.
That's exactly what we do.
and the other thing I was curious about is, you talk about when you were growing up, your family was not religious, but the people around you were religious, and having these other people around was difficult for you, right? Mm-hmm. So was your family providing any support? I mean, I think the fact that your family is not religious should have helped you, but it's not clear that it did.
I think it did help me. I mean, my family was unusual because my dad was a single parent, and my dad was definitely way more liberal than the other parents, that I was around. And I think that did help me. I just think, I don't know, just the things that I grew up and did, like, I feel like I had a lot of opportunities. I studied abroad, I went to college, like, I did all these things, and that was what my dad pushed on me. He pushed me to have these experiences, whereas, maybe my friends was more pushed on, getting married and, having a family, and that stuff wasn't pushed on me at all, So I think that did help that my dad was more liberal and not as religious.
But in spite of his support, your community still got you down, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. People were very judgmental.
That's too bad. I was lucky. I grew up in a Boston suburb, and there may have been some religion there, but it was not expressed. So obviously, and there wasn't anything in my schools that I could sense. I was lucky to grow up where I did.
That's good. Yeah, I just, when I was growing up there, I hated it so much. Like, I mean, I do have good memories of, my family and friends. We did have fun sometimes, but like, I don't know. When I turned 18, like I was gone, not looking back.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was especially impressed, by the way, with your 7 reasons for not speaking up. I think
That's good.
yeah, we've all kind of felt that. I can remember at some point, I just realized there wasn't any point in trying to correct someone as a kid, trying to correct their religious views, because it would just create hostility. And I think you kind of grow up with that feeling. Although when you're talking about not very religious and celebrating Christmas, well, of course, that's what Christmas is all about: trees and decorations and lights and toys.
Yes.
There's some religious background there too. I forget what it was. It was never an important family. And the other thing I almost miss from being a Catholic is after Thanksgiving was Friday, and you would stay up past midnight on Friday as a kid so you could eat some turkey. That was a big ceremony. Oded.
Yeah, something interesting. I was not born in America, not into Christian community either. And for me, the song that most important was Henny Oakley, doing all what comes naturally. Today we go out of what called naturalism. That means to take care of our mental health, we have to go to the professional. We cannot take care of ourselves. To get some help, we can use chemicals and all the other stuff. It means we're dependent on something which are not nature anymore. And I think if you go instead of atheism to naturalism, this should be much better, because human being natural species much more as a cultural species with all the chemicals, brain treatment, and all the psychologists. Like I think like 17,000 psychologists available for people right here in Northern California. That means it's kind of a disease, because in my time there was 1 or 2 psychologists in the whole country.
Wow.
That means today we get others spoiled. We can't handle our mental without medicine or chemicals, cannot handle our personal issue without going to some expert. If you want to get muscle, you have to do the gym. You can send your psychologist to the gym instead. The same thing about mental health. You have to do it yourself. This is the exercise. If somebody do it for you, this is interesting, but so the point for me is atheism is not important. For me, more important is naturalism. With this, you can assign God if you want, or nature, or science, or whatever you want to be your guideline. But it is being natural, and this is my point of view. Replacing religion, atheism, with naturalism. End of speak.
Thank you. For me, though, I truly believe that schizoaffective disorder is a disease, so it has to be treated medically. It's a medical problem. And for me, taking medication is just like somebody with diabetes taking insulin. That's the same way I view it. I'm just taking, my medical treatment.
You get diabetes because not control of your food that you're eating. That means it's not a natural disease. It's something that we develop because of the food that we teach to eat, which is not natural food.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me when you were talking was good. I'm not muted. was the comment that even the band in your school had its own chaplain.
Mm,
It does sound really, really intrusive.
yeah. Yeah. The chaplain was actually a local pastor, and his son was in the band.
It's one of the things I like about the Bay Area, where and I suppose any city is like that.
I don't have chaplain, I have parents. Much better.
Is it?
Well, yeah, but your parents can't prescribe medication in case that's what you need.
My doctor prescribed me aspirin if I feel pain, and no more than that. Because he can't afford it with our Medicare. So you have to go to, instead of aspirin, you can get vitamin C, which is as good as aspirin. It also relieves your stress, by the way. Or eat oranges or spinach, whatever, rich with vitamin C.
What was I going to say this? Oh, someone was talking about when you decided that you were an atheist, and I was thinking my family, kind of like yours, we were Catholic but not religious, and there are all kinds of stories go around that you choose to pay attention to or not. It's only when they sent me to catechism class that I realized I don't like these people, and I think that's what cemented my atheism right there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I got really lucky. I showed up at kindergarten, and within a week got to observe the theological battle between the preacher's kid and the pastor's kid. And as an outsider watching these two argue, I was inoculated, just first day in school or first week in school. There's one view of the world, there's another view of the world, and they're battling. And I picked up on that very quickly.
That was in kindergarten?
Well, they had the preacher's kid and the pastor's kid, and their theological was, kindergarten level at the time.
Yeah.
And yet there was this existential war present between them.
Wow.
And that's what I picked up on, is that this one is different from that one. And that's always been the big key, is once you see that one skull, one God, it becomes so clear what they say. But even in kindergarten, because we had the preacher's kid and the pastor's kid in my kindergarten class, that helped me become an atheist by the age of 6.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Wow.
Well, the other key was my mother's side job. She taught organ and piano. And every church has an organist or a pianist, and they come to her for classes, and they take vacations in the summer. And there was the summer when I was either 4 or 5, where over a course of that summer, every Sunday morning, I went with Mom, probably to let Dad sleep, or to increase tips, I don't know what. But I got to see a dozen different church services that summer from the choir pit or the organ loft. And once you've seen that many of them together, the chances that anything in there makes, a real sense to anyone once you see the variety, that's all it takes.
Wow.
It kind of reminds me of a comment I heard someone make, that when she was growing up, she traveled a lot from country to country. I think her parents were in the military. And she'd go to the local schools, and she found history kind of amusing because they'd tell the same story, but it was a little different in every country. Different emphasis, different guilty parties, and but I just want to say I really enjoy your poems. I hardly notice the rhyme, so they don't feel at all forced. And they're nice, realistic, down-to-earth feelings.
Thank you.
We make sure that the places to get the forms are put into the chat so we can find them.
What is that?
Your poems, put the
The
places where we can.
Oh, okay, sure.
I just want to comment to Carl, taking 20 years to get through that process. My route to that was a lot shorter, it was more expensive, but seminary can have the same effect. I also want to comment, Megan, I had sympathy for your father being single. Empathy, let me say, not sympathy, but empathy for your father as a single parent. I was a single parent from the time my children were in junior high. And you have no idea what that is until you go through it. And most of it's good. Most of it's good. But there are also challenges that you did not anticipate.
Yeah. It was really rough on him. Like I definitely saw that growing up, that, you know, he struggled, but he's just such a strong man. Just everything he went through, you know. My mom passed away when I was only 5 in a car accident, and that's why he was a single parent. And I'm very close to my dad. Even today, he moved a little bit closer to Toledo not too long ago, and he helps out with our daughter all the time. Like, he's always around. I'm very close to him.
Still Catholic?
What?
Your father still religious?
No, he's not at all now.
My mother also faded. She, somewhere in her 80s or 90s, she admitted that she thought I was right.
And you said, I told you so.
No, I never told her so. That was part of the 3 kids finally confronted her when she was 60 or so. And I remember from that, she said she felt like a failure. She was disappointed in her performance as a mother for producing an atheist. And yet she also didn't believe, and, you know, hadn't been in church in 20 years at the time we mentioned it to her. So it's not like she was religious. And the other thing is that in our house, there was a Bible on the mantle and 3 encyclopedias down on the shelves where I could reach them.
I put in the chat where you can get my poetry book. I just want to let you guys know, if you go to my publisher's website, freethoughthouse.com, you can get a signed copy.
Oh, wonderful. Carl, you see your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was thinking as I was hearing Paul talk about the rapid transitions and what have you. You know, it turns out that earlier I mentioned how long it took me to declare myself an atheist, but I became a non-believer much sooner. I was allowed to use that term. It wasn't so offensive, but I could say that my rise was exponential. But I did have the same experience. I think it was Alex was talking about because I thought these people are really odd the way they think. When I was in catechism and I was only whatever 5 or 6 years old, so but in the meantime, everybody else, so at least I believed they believed. When I address them today, I don't believe they believe like that anymore. If you see what I mean, they don't actually turn to God and these sorts of things. Like something goes wrong and they turn to God for solutions, which everybody did when I was a kid. And like we used to attend a lot of funerals, for example. I will say one thing that was very good for me because they just became more commonplace. And so I'm less afraid of funerals than many people are. They're a different thing. And just to give you an example, they used to hire professional mourners. They would bring these people, they'd come in, and the correct protocol was you were supposed to scream and cry when you entered the room. If any others of you have not experienced that, you really miss a good show. I mean, it's really good. Well done. And some of the people are actually honest about it, but they believe that's what they're supposed to do, if that makes sense. They believe they're supposed to do that, which gives you an idea of the power of this mind, whatever it is, that goes on when you're a little kid. The infamous, give me a kid when I'm some Pope said that, or bishop or something said, give me a child, up to the age of 6, and I'll give you a Catholic forever. They weren't kidding. So anyway, I'll stop.
Jerry, Dana?
Yeah, I was wondering, I keep running into people who were non-believers, but didn't admit that they were non-believers. And I may have even shown some religious aspects. I'm kind of wondering now, out of all the religious people in the country, how many of them really are believers and how many of them are fakes, so to speak?
I wonder that too. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like back home, maybe not everyone was religious. Maybe they were just expected to be religious, Maybe they didn't truly believe. I don't know.
Or they learned how to drive the road of the religious person in their society.
Yeah.
And they're all doing this because everybody else is doing this. If there's only some way you could sort of shine a light on it. Look, nobody really
it turns a profit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, money certainly is a good motivator for almost anything. And I had a question for you. I think you said you had this web page which included /ashes.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
why?
FreethoughtBlogs.com/ashes.
So why ashes?
Ashes because of the name of my blog, From the Ashes of Faith. And the reason I named my blog that is because I feel it's kind of like a phoenix type of thing, like how the world could be just so much better when religion falls. It's just kind of like an optimism thing, I guess. But I just took that name from the name of my blog.
So you think it's because of that concept of the phoenix that? Oh, okay. Yeah, there's something disquieting about ashes for me, but I don't know what it is. Okay, I'm done.
I think the idea that people feel they're supposed to believe, whether they do or not, is the problem, And if I talk about my own family's religion, I think they believed that religion was a good thing, and it didn't go much further than that. And the stories kind of reminds me of my father telling me, if I don't eat everything on my plate, it will rain tomorrow.
Sometimes we need rain. I don't know, maybe it's your fault.
I would skip eating if it would help,
Yeah, I was thinking that if you were in California instead of New Jersey, that would not be a threat.
That's true.
Now we know who to blame.
I eat too much. Okay.
Well, like the idea of ashes.
Ashes are a neat symbol. But isn't that the prize for one of the sports, the cricket championship? Don't they award the ashes? You're okay. I see your hand there, Jerry, Dana.
Dana?
Oh yeah, I like the ashes as a symbol, and it reminds me of the legend of the phoenix. And and the idea that something's burned up and leaving behind a residue. And I mean, ashes aren't they something that's useful in fertilizing the earth? Don't they have valuable minerals and things? So I like the idea of ashes. It's a very ancient idea, but I like it.
Thank you.
They have potassium, potash. Carl,
I just had a quick question, Megan. I went to freethoughtbooks.com. Is that what you said?
Free Thought House.
House. Oh, that's what it is. Wait,
Yeah.
all right. I was wondering why I was getting such funny results. There is
Definitely
such
check them out.
yeah.
They've got some really cool books.
yes, I got it down. Yeah. Well, it's been a wonderful talk. David,
Yes, I think one thing that it seems to me there are people in communities who stay with religion because it's the support system, and their friends and their family are all part of their religious congregation, and they're afraid that if they leave that congregation, they will lose the support system that they rely on.
That's true.
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely. Definitely.
yeah, that's why they're recovering from religion organizations.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in a little town in Maine, and of course, everybody there was Methodist or Baptist or some. We were the only Christian, the only Catholic family in the town. And it's interesting. My grandmother said that she thought that in some trunks in the town, there were sheets, with holes and stuff. Apparently, they used to go after the Catholics because there weren't any Black people. So I really believed it all for a long time, but eventually I came around.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all that. Were you talking about the Klan?
No. Well, I don't know what they were called, but apparently they had it in for anybody Catholic. I'm surprised there were any there, but that's what my grandmother said, because when I lived there, we were the only Catholic family, so it didn't have a. Maybe she made it all up. I don't know. I'm not prepared to defend it, but
No,
that's what she said.
I'm just wondering because in this area, the Klan actually kind of came back in like the 20s and 30s, and there weren't any Black people here either. They always went after Catholics and immigrants.
Yeah, I guess there were no Jews around either. They usually come ahead of us when they're looking for somebody to. The only drawback there were a couple of things. It was a drawback that they had what am I trying to say? The church thing where when you graduate from high school, they have a ceremony. I forget what it's called, but it was held in the church, and I couldn't go because apparently the Catholics don't want you to go in any other church, and they have a rule like that. So I wasn't able to go. Baccalaureate is what it was called.
Wow.
Was it De Malays they used to call them in my school? And they had another name. They were part of the Masons, I think, or something.
Yes, the Masons were very strong.
Yeah.
But those were being, the Protestant thing and far end of it.
Separate from confirmation.
Yes, separate from confirmation. Confirmation, of course, you were very young. Baccalaureate was when you graduated from high school.
Ah,
And fifth communion was the other one that came first.
So Jerry, I see your hand up again. Or Dana.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the comment that, during youth, it seems to me, there's a lot of need to differentiate, get away from the parents, be different from, find your own way, and have freedom. That's really a very strong thrust for becoming an adult. And then, but as you progress through life, down through all the adult stages, I can't help but wonder if there isn't some functionality to having some kind of otherworldly preoccupation when you're about to leave this world. And it's not surprising, is it, that people would want somewhere to go. So in that way, the idea of going to heaven or paradise, is very attractive. And becomes more attractive the older you get, because you don't like to think, whoa, 1 minute I'm here and the next minute utter blackness, no awareness. And so I think you do have to, for some people, it might be helpful to them to have some other place to go. And I don't begrudge them that if that's what they need. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
Well, I have a question about that. I mean, if heaven is supposed to be such a paradise, why don't people want to die early? Why don't people commit suicide so they can get there sooner?
Maybe they do.
Maybe
Well,
Well,
not many.
they love the people that they're with now. They hate to leave.
I thought suicide was a sin.
Yeah, well,
It's suicide.
I thought it was.
oh, I see. If you commit suicide, you're not going to get into heaven. That's why they don't.
Yeah.
You're right. I think that must be it.
Well, I think to religious people it's a sin, but it seems to me that, it's your life, and if you want to end it, and in some way or other, hey, I mean, really, it should be okay. And I don't think always think that suicide may be a bad thing. I mean, like if someone's, fatally ill or very, very unhappy or in a situation where they just despair and they can't get out of it. I mean, I think people have the right to end their life. That's what I think.
It's very humanistic of you.
Thank you.
David.
Another reason why there are some people who want to believe in an afterlife. I was part of a humanist group, and there was a woman who attended, and she had difficulty accepting the idea of humanism, accepting the idea that there wasn't an afterlife, because she had a granddaughter who had died at the age of 5, and she had this idea that after she died, she would see her granddaughter again. And that was a great appeal to her of the whole idea of an afterlife. And we had to say, well, as humanists, we don't believe in that. I mean, it's a nice thing to think, but obviously you can't really base all of your beliefs on what it would be nice to think. And if you don't see any evidence for an afterlife, then, and no one actually went right out and said this to her, because obviously this idea of seeing her daughter, after death was important to her. But I mean, obviously that's something that, as a humanist, I mean, I don't believe in the eternal torture of hell after life, but I also, don't believe in this paradise after death. But because really there isn't evidence for either of them.
That's true.
Shannon?
Well, you said something about people, they tend to get more sunk into Christianity as they get older, but it seems to me it's the other way around. I mean, you hold on to this stuff for just so long, and eventually, often you outgrow it. I know there are a lot of people who have been ministers or so forth, and they continue to function in that way, even though they had come to not believe it.
Well, this raises a question for me, which is that if you're religious and you believe in heaven and that you'll be able to go, you have a nice prospect. Whereas if you're a humanist and when you die, that's the end of it. I mean, it sounds like it just isn't as much fun to be a humanist. Sounds like it might be kind of hard to sell a humanism. In fact, I know that, when I've heard the people in the humanist community talk about how they became humanists, it wasn't because anybody sold them on it. It was because they figured it out on their own.
Yes.
I remember there was one person, I forget his name right now, who moved to San Diego, who talked about how he was reading something, and at 3 a.m. he says, well, I guess I'm not a Mormon anymore.
Well, I think a lot of organizations have the carrot and the stick. The stick is
good combination.
If you sin, you're going to be in big trouble. And the carrot is if you don't sin, you're going to heaven. And hey, maybe that's what the humanists need. They need a carrot.
Carrot and stick?
Well, I don't know about the stick, but I'm all in favor of the carrot.
Okay. Yeah. Who provides the carrots?
I think the feeling is that other people need religion to stay in line. I could get by with that, but I'd probably be better off keeping my mouth shut. I think that's...
Yeah, that's one of the things that bothers me. Apparently, there are religious people who believe that if you're an atheist, you have no reason not to commit crimes. What's to stop you from killing, etc.
So you should ask those people if is the only reason you haven't killed me yet because you're afraid you'll get punished?
I'm afraid I might get punished for asking that question. That's a good question.
It sure is.
By the way, I wanted to point out just to Megan, Dana is probably the best poet in our group.
Really?
Back when we had live meetings, we'd have a talent kind of program once a year, and yeah, Dana's a great poet. You're cleaning the refrigerator is a classic.
Thank you, Alex, for your full support.
And the one about having to do in the beautiful little vegetables that you've grown fond of. That was a good one too.
That fits Italia Amore.
Yeah.
She's had a lot of poems. I've seen more of them because she needs to print them, and I've got the printer, so I get to print them, and of course I read them before I give them to her.
Oh, well, you should make a little book that we could buy, or she could share, or whatever. It would be very nice.
Yeah, I keep meaning to get it together, but somehow haven't done it.
Yeah, I found it very rewarding that I did that thing with the Christmas carols and changed the wording in them so they wouldn't be really
right.
And I've gotten so much positive feedback from that. So I urge you, go ahead and let your light shine.
I think she's going to need a lot of urging. She doesn't actually think as well of her own stuff as others think of it.
No, it's that I'm naturally lazy.
I don't think so. I mean, and generally when you get a compliment, you kind of poo-poo it. So.
No, you don't want to appear too eager for compliments. Otherwise, they might stop coming. Well, so Thank you, Megan. It's been a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thank you
Enjoyed
so
your-
much.
your
This was
company.
great.
And maybe we'll be back again after your next book is published.
I'd love to come back. Yeah, that'd be
Would be
great.
great.
Yeah,